the most annoying remote meeting behavior? People who don't mute. The nostril cam. The visibly empty chair, my personal favorite. Stealth participants who won't share video, Chris. Screen share hogs, that's me. Monologuers.
What's that?
Someone who will not let anybody else talk. Blah, blah, blah. Blah
I
blah,
vote for
blah.
that.
Small, cute children.
You've seen a lot of my small, cute children lately, so.
They actually make me happy to see. I like seeing people, you know, small children and pets and even their family members walking around behind.
It's been nice seeing Fallon and his family at home with their kids and stuff. He just lets
Yeah.
them get right up in the show. He doesn't even care.
Yeah.
Katie,
Cat
that
butts.
was a perfect example.
Right?
I know.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so here's the pet part. Cat butts. Anybody have cats that are
Yes.
getting in front of you? And
Coworker who constantly does that.
barking dogs or multiple amateur facilitators.
And what about smoking?
Smoking.
Yeah, when people are smoking on the meeting.
Wow.
Wow, that's weird.
That annoys me. I don't know why. They're not in there and present for me, but smoking in the meeting, yes.
What could they, it just bothers you the whole time, Patty?
Yeah, because they're sitting there and it doesn't bother me that they drink or eat, but it's kind of this psychological thing when they're sitting there smoking and they're laying, you know, you can just barely see them and they're participating in the meeting. That to me just, you know, says you're not really present, you're not focused, you're not professional. There's a lot of things that come with that behavior.
The eating bothers me, and I actually have done it.
Yeah, per her comment, that's why I don't have a camera. Thank you very much.
All right. So then what
So
do we
I got
miss-
the chaise lounge, fanning palm, grapes in the mouth, the whole shebang. You guys would just be sick with it. So, you know, I'm doing you a favor.
All right, third question and final. What do you miss most about face-to-face meetings or events? And why don't you just tell me what you miss?
I miss the chit chat that happens when everything's like getting set up or breaking down. It's kind of getting to know people.
I'd say networking. I don't really miss much of the rest. I kind of love this. But networking, meeting new cool people, I don't think that happens over Zoom quite the same way.
Yeah, absolutely.
I have had it happen, but not regularly. I've only had it happen in breakout rooms at a big conference. The rest of the time, no.
Being out of the damn house for me.
Do what?
Being out of the damn house. That one's mine.
Being out of the damn house. That's probably my biggest pain point this whole time, not just with remote meetings, but at all. I did sneak into Key Co-working for one thing to print something out, and it just felt like wonderful relief to just be working from someplace else. Didn't realize how much I missed it until I went in there. I got misty-eyed.
Yeah, I'm missing everything that's not the house, like Tom said, just getting out of it. Like the other day, I took an hour and a half to get to the restaurant that's 10 minutes away.
And then
I did that last night to get cookies.
Oh.
I made a 10-minute cookie drive about an hour.
And I tell you what, those cookies probably tasted so good.
So damn good.
As a presenter, I miss when in a lot of these interactions in platforms, I can't present my material and share screen and see people's feedback and faces. I can't see whether they're paying attention or they're nodding or they've left their chair entirely. And that proved to be something that I'm still having trouble getting used to, is that lack of feedback. So that's the thing I miss as a presenter most from the face-to-face. And it's the reason that I even though I like the fact that everybody's being forced to adopt remote sort of more, because it'll help us sell more different products and workshops to more people. We can reach more people online, but there's definitely something that I'm missing.
I'm tired of constantly managing my face.
Is there no relief from that? Talk more about that, Kate.
It's just I am constantly aware that I should be looking at the camera and appearing to pay attention. And in a normal meeting, you can look around the room.
Okay.
Another advantage of saying, I don't have a camera.
I have been in some groups that you don't have a camera, you don't get to play. And that it's a agreement that the team makes together, that if they're going to be in a workshop, that they agree to keep their camera on, and the camera on is a signal that I am engaged, and camera off is a signal I'm not engaged. And they require that agreement. Let me show you something.
Wow, if only we had that semaphore in
Tom
real
goes
life.
off camera.
As long as we had that semaphore in real life meetings. You know what I mean?
Yes.
That's an advantage of this medium.
So I had a Zoom meeting with my extended family, and I wanted something to create engagement and authentic sharing. So that's why I asked you all to share a worry. So what I'm going to share with you is this technique called worry dolls. Anybody done worry dolls before? They're from Guatemala. They come in a groovy little box or a bag, and they're handcrafted by humans. And this is a technique using real things and showing you real objects is a way of creating an additional connection. There's a design guru named John Maeda. He's doing brief connecting sessions with other designers, and he just uses small objects. And so what I decided to do was a show and tell about my worry dolls. I've used these for about 20 years. They're very inexpensive, available on Amazon. And what I would like to say is that, tell me something that you said you were worried about. If you will, just restate them for me.
I'm pivoting a really big national conference to a digital platform, and I'm kind of worried about how we're going to do that.
Okay. I'm worried about pivoting a bunch of client stuff too. We're inundated with clients that need to pivot from real life to digital. So
pivot woes. We all have pivot woes.
Pivot woes. So this is Miguel, and he's going to worry about pivot woes. I tell him, you're going to worry about pivoting, and I'm going to put him in the box. He is now worried about that. We don't have to. We've outsourced the worry. So the next one is Juan. What are we going to tell Juan to worry about?
Learning how to transform my in-person class to remote teaching and engaging my students effectively in the learning.
Mm-hmm. So engaging, transforming to a digital platform and engaging people. All right, so Juan's gonna worry about that. You don't have to worry about that anymore. Caroline, you had talked about, this is one that is top of mind for me. San Antonio is getting ready to open up a whole bunch of distance stuff back up to the public because we're Texas and we don't need to worry about that kind of thing. And I'm worried about it. So opening up our city or our locality is a big worry for me. And we're going to have Esperanza, her name means hope. She's going to worry about opening back up. Safety.
I would say we put 2 of those in there, but you know, the whole distance.
Oh, well. All right. So let's put Maria in there too.
But well, we can't. They should distance, right? Or no, that's the worry. Right? Sorry. Now I'm worried about it. Oh, never mind. Go ahead.
All right. Somebody said, I'm worried my remote meetings will continue to suck. Should we put Amparo on that one? And then we have one more, Paloma. What are we going to have Paloma worry about? Oh, Carla, you'd said keeping your clients and staff safe. I would add not just clients and staff, but I'm worried about my husband.
Family.
And I'm worried about vectoring it. I'm the one that goes out to shop and, go secretly to key co-working and stuff like that. So I'm worried that I'll vector something in. So
we're still about 20 days away from even considering opening, but yeah, my mom's immunocompromised.
Mm.
And it's like, if any of us get sick, she gets sick.
Yeah,
we're worried about anybody we know. Does anybody already have somebody who's sick? Like bad sick? Tom?
Not super bad, but my wife was sick. She's getting better, but it was really bad for a couple days.
Glad to hear she's getting better.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I had a supervisor who had COVID, but is healed now.
All right.
Really good news.
So Paloma is going to worry about everybody we love getting through this. All right. And so they're on this. We don't have to worry about that right now. We're going to put those aside. And what my section of the Digital Feast was designed to do is create more connection. And the more you can get people sharing their true feelings and their thoughts and their worries and their aspirations, we can deepen that connection. So what I would like to do, does anybody have any observations about that or additional ideas about creating that human to human connection in a digital way? Are you ready to move on to the next part of the feast? Move on?
I actually want to shine a light on what you have just done, which is to spend what would seem like an inordinate amount of time actually connecting with people on an emotional level.
So interesting that you bring that up. I'm sure I'm not the only one that has been impatient with what I call chit chat or drive-by or social niceties. I have often thought, let's just get to it. Chris and I have a lot of folks that we have only met remotely. We've worked with them for years remotely. I'm thinking about Max. Max is a developer that is Russian, and he is now living in Thailand, and he's been with us for almost 20 years, I would say.
Yeah.
And he's a great guy. And I know about his daughter and his wife and, where they live and what they like to do. And the reason I know this is he insists on a little bit of human to human connection before he will engage, because I am paying him by the hour and I am usually in a hurry and I usually have way too much going on. So I'll just get with him on Skype and Max, can you blah, blah, blah. And what I've learned is you have to slow down in order to get stuff through Max. Is that what your kind of thing you're talking about, Kate?
Absolutely. It's that whole focus on relationship before task that is so easy to let go of when you're in a hurry.
Mm-hmm. So.
Right. Yeah, I use that same sort of padding idea in my meetings. Like I know that I'm going to have a call with a client, and it varies on the client, but I usually will give myself 15 or 20 minutes of, we're not on the clock. I know we're going to get together. We're going to vent. We're going to bullshit. We're going to, got to get that stuff out of the way. Then we can dive into business. And then at the end, you do a little sort of the same. This is kind of one of the pet peeves I've noticed that I would like to see that's addressed here is at the end of the meeting, I sometimes feel like people are so quick to want to just leave that I really do like having let's just sit here for a minute. Like we don't have to go right away. We got another 5 minutes. Let's just think about what we just said. Let's maybe share some more personal things as a way to exit on a nice note or whatever. And it's those little padding niceties that, it gets you in, it gives you a transition mentally to from all this to now we're going to focus on this. And then on the end, I'm going to try to hit you with a couple of nice notes. So we walk away, we feel good about this instead of walking back into the you know what I mean?
I do.
So I'm going to do a demonstration of how to apply 3 principles to keep people focused and attentive on what you're trying to convey, on the information you're trying to convey. So the first point on this, and I have to remember to draw slowly so my markers can keep up with me. Think about what the point is that you want to share, and do that ahead of time. And then while you are talking, show, there we go, while you tell. So don't just leave it to a talking head. And the third thing, which you are witnessing right here, is to do it in front of people. Because once you do this kind of drawing in front of people, we're all traveling at the same rate on the same path. So those are the three principles, and so I'm going to demonstrate them right now. So here you are. Here we all are in our bubble. And we're in these meetings. And it seems like they just go on and on and on. And in the meantime, in this bubble that we're in, there are other things going on. So, for example, if you are like some of us, you might be thinking during the meeting or before the meeting, if I could just go downstairs and throw in a load of laundry, I would be able to do more this evening for myself, and that chore would be out of the way. Or, I'm trying to make sure that you can see what I'm drawing. Or you might be one of those people that we talked about who periodically has a cat butt come through the video. Of that,
Guilty.
that's a bit of a distraction. Or, like we mentioned, you might have little kids who are so thrilled that you are home with them and they are home, and all they can think about is, why aren't you playing with me? Or somebody mentioned this the other day. It's a beautiful day and there are birds tweeting outside the window, and all you can think about is, how soon can I actually get outside? Or there's something that's going on that people are starting to study, of course, because it's a great opportunity, about this, and I talked a little bit about it, about managing my face. We have this situation now where we have an always on gaze, and that's exhausting us, and it's not what we're used to. The other thing that's going on that's exhausting is that when we are in meetings and we're able to see each other face to face, we have a lot more information, sources of input, than we do when it's just this much of us. So we're trying to interpret how people are feeling, what the backstory is, but all we've got from them is this single face, and we don't have this nice range of emotions. So we're trying to make a lot of interpretations on this emotional scale using very little information, and that's also exhausting us. And then we've got this stealth thing, the thing that's always a distraction for us, but now people can't actually see us doing it. And it's the phone and the text messages that we can send and receive, and nobody knows. So we've got all of these other things going on, plus one more. This is not a COVID virus, but it's sort of looking that way. So one more thing that's going on is, I'll bet that there's more than one of these every day on your calendar. And about the time that I'm getting to the end of one, I'm thinking about the next one and what do I need to do and who do I need to be. So loads of things that are taking our attention away from what's actually going on in the meeting. Demonstration. Think about what is an image that will help you convey your message. Show and tell, and draw live. That's me.
Go back to gallery view and talk about what Kate is sharing. The one additional bubble that I thought of while you were drawing is just the tech itself. The tech itself, like I'll find myself wrestling with it. Like today I couldn't make the poll work. That's an additional distraction for me. And as I get better at these meetings, thank you for being part of my learning curve. But as I get better at these, I get less and less hung up on this kind of stuff. But these are complicated tools, a lot of them.
How many people have had their microphone muted while they were saying something really important?
Kate, can you say more about the always on exhaustion as far as, and you talked about when we were doing our prep session, you talked about the fact that we're looking at ourselves. It's almost like if you're old enough to remember when voicemail was first a thing, which most of you are not old enough to remember that, but the first few times I heard my own voice on voicemail, it was just like, and I was so worried about that. And you mentioned like one of your worries is, how do I look on camera? And then just the fact that you're exhausted just having to focus in, or what? Tell me more about that.
So this deal about the always on gaze is that as primates, it's connected to intimacy. But we have this online behavior that requires that we pay attention, and we look like we're paying attention all the time. So what we're doing is we're creating this disconnect, because often it's not someone on the other end of the phone that we really would choose to be or need to be intimate with, but we've got this intense stare. So when you think about how movies are shot, for example, and when the camera is up close on the face, we are drawn into intimacy, and which is why, and especially when the face is bigger than real life. So it's this, we're balancing something we don't understand, and we don't have a respite. So I can't really look away and look around the room and have you believe that I think you're important, and that you're important enough for me to focus 100% of my attention.
Well,
that was a lot of blah, blah, blah. I should have on it.
It makes perfect sense. And one of the things we talked about in our prep was we wanted to alternate times when we were the Brady Bunch grid versus things that we were all paying attention to together, whether it's one person's talking head or one person presenting, or you're drawing. So your section was about minimizing distraction, and what we're paying attention to the drawing taking shape. And that's sort of like, while I'm paying attention to that, I'm not worried about what I look like or whether I'm picking my nose or whatever.
That's nice. Yes. I hadn't made that connection, but yeah, it makes total sense to me.
Just like in a social feed, as a designer, I want there to be some images and some videos and some words and different colors and different aspect ratios, just so that it's not all same, because I'm going to lose focus on same.
So the thing that's coming up for me, which is more related to the conversation about what we just did, is that I would love it if we would agree with each other that this is not the only, first of all, that we trust each other to pay attention, period, the end, and that this is not a requirement for me to prove it to you.
So you don't like the insist that people have their camera on all the time or any of that?
I don't, and I think it actually creates another stream for distraction.
So
can I chime in real quick?
Yes, please.
Another question.
First, Tom, then Patty.
I haven't introduced myself. I don't know several of you. I'm Tom Vaughan. I worked with Susan and McD at USAA for years back in 2001 through 2000 and whatever.
Good times.
Susan and I are and Chris and I are working together again on some stuff for Firecat, so I'm happy to join. But I worked for Amazon and Microsoft for several years, and it was part of the culture to have conference calls constantly because they're global companies. So we would be talking to India or London or whoever, and so very rarely did we have video calls. You know, unless you were in an office that was specifically designed to have video conferencing. And so I think now more than ever, we also need to be okay with just going back to regular phone conference calls. Like to her point about being okay that people aren't paying attention, when it's, you know, we're all used to conference calls. We've all had a bazillion of those, but we feel this extra urgent kind of pressure to be on video now, but it's okay to just let people be on a call. Like I would actually say, to encourage people to say, you know, it's okay that we're not going to have a video call, or even to, you know, weave in regular conference calls into your cadence so that you're not always having to force people to be on video. Because I'm very good at multitasking on a conference call where I don't have to pay attention until it's important for me to pay attention, and I don't have to be present until it's important for me to say something. And most people are. Anyway, just wanted to say, like, to second that idea of we don't always have to be facing the camera, paying attention at all times. As a facilitator, you know, as a meeting leader, it can also be good for folks to recognize that and let people tune out, multitask, you know, let people turn off their video. Like I actually used to encourage people to turn off their video unless they were speaking, right? Like just, we would set up the meeting. So it'd be like, okay, whenever you're ready to speak, just raise your hand and then turn on your video and I'll know to come to you. And then as soon as you're done speaking, turn it off so that you're only focusing on one face, right? Anyway, just I've
and it's not and it's not distracting, right? Because having the too many chat heads, man, I've gone off just staring at what other people in the meeting are doing and lost focus on what we should be, you know, right?
Absolutely, and it's always going to be human nature that you're worried about your appearance when you're seeing your appearance, right? I mean, you're seeing yourself in a grid or in a, you know, in a big box with a bunch of other people. You can't help it. So just, I've talked long enough on that point, but totally agree that, you know, sometimes it's okay to let people tune out and not have to be, you know, staring at the camera 100% of the time. We are okay at multitasking. We've done phone calls and conference calls since the 80s. So anyway, thanks.
So my question to Kate, this is Patty, and so I'm very well aware of visual practitioners, which is fabulous. So you're saying that in the section on distraction, that one way to bring focus is to use imagery, whether you're doing it as a visual practitioner on your whiteboard, looks like a whiteboard, or even using the whiteboard within the platform. So my question on the whiteboard and the platform is it, I have not had a lot of success with the whiteboard because I think people are very awkward with the annotation tools. So what are some strategies in terms of effectively using the whiteboard if we're using it as a distraction, whether it's imagery or writing? That would be one of my questions.
So is your question about the whiteboard, the use of the whiteboard technology, Patty?
Yeah, part of it is the whiteboard technology, but it's also tied to what I'm getting from your piece is using imagery to get people focused on the thought, the conversation, the thing that you're wanting to share and do. But that could also be done that they're doing it also, whether it's a meeting, a webinar, or not a webinar, but a training, a meeting, a dialogue, whatever it is that people are doing in the room.
So, well, there's so much in your question.
I know, I'm sorry.
No. So I have found that for the most part, unless you are truly prepared, as to use the technology, whiteboard technology, that's another rabbit hole to fall down. But since you've got I mean, it's hard to get the mouse to draw right. So if you have a graphic tablet, great. If you don't, you're kind of struggling with the display, and you've got tool issues. But you do have cameras, and you do have paper, and you do have pens, and Sharpies and white paper. We all understand how to use. So your point on getting other people to draw, I think it's incredibly engaging. The difference between what I did and getting other people to draw is I did a lot of thinking, and in fact, Susan and Abby and I did a lot of thinking about what is the image that will convey the idea most clearly. So when you're trying to send information through the stream, you want the picture to not take away from the message. So you have to do some thinking about it ahead of time. When you want people to think visually, then you don't need to do that prep, right? You want that to happen in the spur of the moment. So it depends on what you're trying to accomplish.
Okay. But the technique of whether you, the facilitator, are coming with a predetermined image to convey the thought, or engaging the participants to take out a piece of paper if they don't use the whiteboard technology to draw, which then they can there share. It brings another level of engagement and gets them focused and not distracted.
Absolutely, and it just depends on what is the purpose.
Okay,
Like,
right.
what is it you're trying to accomplish?
Okay.
It's a wonderful, getting other people to draw is a wonderful way to free up thinking.
Okay, great. Thank
I
you.
love that you brought it up.
Thank you.
We've had Kate present on that specific topic in our face-to-face at Key Co-working, actually, where she's teaching people who don't think they can draw that everybody can draw. Wow. And she has a whole lot of interesting stuff to say about that. She has a website all about it called stickyknowledge.com. And I think there's some good information on that, but she's a wealth of information. But
all right, so Patty, that was a brilliant segue, almost as if we planted that, but we did not. So the last section that we're going to do here in this feast, the last thing we're going to feast on, is doing a little bit of co-creation. So in this sense, we're abiding by the principle that you all are not here just to listen to us talk, but to actually engage in a conversation. There's value in every person that attends the meeting, and you're not just digesters of information, but you're also co-creators with us. So for this last step, we would like to put the prompt out for you all of what ideas do you have to make your digital session more engaging? And then as we go, I will go ahead and capture these ideas. So I put a couple in here already based on the conversation, not to overwhelm the canvas, but just to get us started. So Chris, earlier you mentioned the exiting on a nice note and leaving space for that at the end. Kate and Patty, you just opened up the conversation of getting others to draw. So I want to pass this back to you all of what other ways can we make digital sessions even more engaging? And feel free just to unmute yourself. There's not too many of us here, so we can.
I don't know how to say this, but it's kind of what Tom was echoing and Kate about not having to be all the features all the time. Just because we can video doesn't mean we should. Sort of, I don't know, judicious use of the technology. I don't know.
Absolutely.
One of the things Susan and I talked about previously was when a session is engaging via conversation, right? When it's just one person talking at you and not really engaging the group, but how do you make your sessions a dialogue? How do you make sure that you're calling on people, right? So that folks are having to pay attention and be present. I don't know. I think that dialogue is really, really important. You know, this is a great example. You know, just a bunch of us on this call had questions and, you know, comments to add to the conversation, and it wasn't just one or two people talking at us the whole time.
Right, and to kind of piggyback off of what Tom is saying, you guys know I'm planning a conference, not just a meeting, so it's kind of top of mind for me. Some things that we're planning on doing to engage our audience is to have them prepared kind of to be a working group instead of just listening to an expert. So I think we're going to have to get creative with the platform, but asking people ahead of time, like, hey, come to this ready to put your ideas out there.
So this is Patty. One thing I'd like to add that I've been using no, I'd say over the last 2 years, and recently used on Monday with 80 people, is Mentimeter. And I love Mentimeter as a way to engage people with hearing all their voices and all the different ways that you can use Mentimeter. So you can get word clouds, you can do opening questions, you can do quiz. Actually, we just did a pub quiz with Helene, and that was a lot of fun. So you can use it for a lot of ways to engage and still hear people's ideas. And you might not have heard of it, but just go check it out.
Can you spell that for me?
Mentimeter. Mentimeter.
Thank you.
Sort of like the online polls that you use, except on steroids.
Yeah.
Right.
It's great. It's great.
So I'm not sure how to say this, and this will sound probably too brutal, but intentionality, essentially, like, are we having meetings just to have meetings? Or is there a great intention driving them? And I think there's a really obvious difference when you're in those meetings. I could tell some bad stories, but I won't. And I just think, to echo other people's points, maybe a Zoom call isn't what you need. Maybe some preparation is, and definitely a very clear sense of why we're having it and why everyone involved is there. Not just to be obligatory, not just because we pivoted from a physical workplace to this one, but like, really and truly, why are we here?
Absolutely. And this just inspired something. Who wrote text with their mouse?
I did. Mentimeter is actually a texting tool, so people can, they basically text a number and the poll comes up on the screen. So I wanted y'all to know it was like a texting feature. However,
That's
my handwriting
awesome.
is not as good as whoever is actually.
So, well, just to a little bit of tech nerdery. So I'm using an iPad Pro and Procreate, and I'm projecting my canvas from, so if you can still see my video, I've got my tablet here and I'm using a Apple Pencil on it.
Nice.
So that's why it's very different. But I would encourage anyone who wants to draw some things on top of this canvas using the annotate, feel free, even if you just have a mouse and want to write it, feel free to contribute, or you can add hearts, you can add shapes, whatever you want to co-create this canvas with us.
Oh, that's cool.
But yes, great point, Lily, about the intentionality.
And that's a really helpful tip. She just talked about having a pen. So you can do it on an iPad. You can do it on a, there's a, I forget what they're called, but the drawing surface that graphic artists use so that you can draw using a pen.
Wacom.
There's Wacom. So those are great, because I don't have a whiteboard behind me, but those are great tools to figure out a way to use a pen so that you can have like a whiteboard experience.
Nothing
What
wrong
else?
with a plain old whiteboard.
Nope. And you can also type on this, so feel free to do that. What else? What else can we add to this? If this can be a memory for you of what we talked about and some of the ideas.
So what I've been doing for some of my meetings, if it's going to be longer than, say, 30 minutes, is I will schedule in icebreaker time or catch-up time, depending on whether or not I know the person. And it's help get people out of panic survival mode and into more creative, hey, we're problem solving, we have time to react. Let's actually work on solutions and not just grabbing at straws. Because it kind of breaks that seriousness that people come in with, and it's like, it's helped.
Absolutely.
It's something that, so I'm thinking about what Carla just said and what Chris has said and the work that Susan does to connect. And I'm thinking the question that I've got in my head is, how do we create a sense of like expansive breath during we have this drive on the clock and this schedule on the clock, and it seems like the technology for me, it focuses me more on the task. And how do we create that sense of expansion and that sense of that pause, that sense of breath? If that makes sense.
Absolutely. And I think there, just to build on that, Kate, too, there is a lot of power in the pause. And we commonly do that in in-person sessions, but we often forget about it in the digital world because everything's moving so fast. And that's the expectation with digital, is that things move faster. But I got into a conversation yesterday with a colleague about, as a facilitator, sometimes your role is just to hold a space for people to engage and talk. And when you do that in the digital world, it is really your role to give people a digital space, to set up a digital room, to give people an ability to engage in a conversation. So you're setting up a space differently when you're working digitally, but still it is about holding that space. And in holding that space, in person, you would add in those elements of the pause and breathing and reassessing where you are. So I think that's a beautiful point to move to digital as well.
Well, and I think pacing, right? So the facilitator manages the pace.
Absolutely. So I'm seeing a couple more on here. We've got Google Docs, screen sharing, Mural, using stickies. If you're not familiar with Mural, it's basically Post-it notes digitally. There are more tech tools like mind mapping. You can also use those between meetings. Chris loves the pause. Let's see what else we have in here. Someone tell me about the Interactivity, the stamp on location.
That was mine. This is Helene. I had a seminar that I was presenting, and there were participants from all over the country and in Canada. So as an opening activity, both as an icebreaker and also a way for them to be introduced to the Annotate tool, because a lot of people on this seminar had never used a Zoom Annotate tool. When they entered, they had to go into Annotate and put a little stamp on their location. So as an icebreaker, everybody can see where we're coming from. So we had California and New York and Ottawa. And it was a nice way to start chatting, because then they opened up the chat box and said, hey, who's in Ohio? I'm only 3 hours away from you. So that was a nice little opening. And I didn't have to worry about tech later on for the quote unquote real activity, because they had already used the annotation tool.
That's awesome. And Helene, what group did you say this was with?
This was a seminar company who hired me to present to their membership. It's called IMS, the Institute for Management Studies. And as long as I'm unmuted, I wanted to piggyback on what you, Abby, and also Kate were talking about, the pause with my sessions, because they're around mind management. A lot of folks who attend have never slowed down before and have never experienced quiet before. So during these virtual sessions, I've had as long as a 7-minute silent period where people were capturing their thoughts. They were just on their own. They didn't have kids in the background. And a lot of them have said, I have not sat still and just thought that way for so long. So we don't have to be on verbally and visually the whole time. Sometimes silence is what people need as well.
What time to actually think about what we're doing? That's crazy talk.
I know. Call me insane.
Well, that's just it. The things that, I'm all about the fast pace. We got a lot to do. We got to get in. We got to get out. But I'm also among the brain of the whatever words. I'm not good with them. The mind that, I want to get in and really sit down and focus and really think about it, so we don't have to come back and do this again. So yeah, having that time to feel like it's okay to think and not feel rushed, I think is priceless.
Absolutely. So Susan, I will pass this back to you to close us up for this. And thank you everyone for your contributions. It's been really fun to co-create this visual with you. So I'm going to take a quick screenshot here of this so I can make sure I capture the annotations as well.
This was so fun.
Yeah, really neat idea.
So we intended to make this an engaging session, how well did we succeed? On like the 5, which one would you give us? Out of 1 being, or it sucked completely and I checked out, and 5 is it met my expectations and then some. Thank you, Caroline.
Nice to see you, Caroline.
McD, which
Sorry, I was eating earlier, and I don't do that on camera.
I gave it a 6, and props to Caroline for going on camera. Dang, I'm going to get a camera now.
The other thing that I want to point out to myself, because I'm super hard on myself, it's like the poll didn't work and we had 2, plus practice sessions and I still didn't get that right. And there's, I'll go into shame if I allow myself, but that kind of stuff is just human. It doesn't matter all that much. The other, I'm taking away from Tom and Lily too, the goal of the meeting and the outcomes that you want, the framing of that is so important. And I want to shout out to Abby and Kate both that forced me to slow down and plan this stuff. There's a really excellent book called The Art of Gathering that Kate introduced me to. And if you don't know about this book, the author is Priya Parker, Priya Parker. She's a super interesting person, and the book itself is just genius. And it's all about being super intentional about every single aspect, which to me as a designer, how we design experiences, that is the skill set, that you can make things rock if you just give it enough forethought and creativity, apply that. So I am in awe of my smart friends who help me learn this discipline and slow down enough to apply it, because I'm always in such a rush that the slow down message is really coming through for me. Who else has a takeaway that they would like to?
Can I share my favorite Priya Parker quote?
Of course.
Never start a funeral with logistics.
What does it look like when you do start a funeral with logistics?
Hi, everybody. The bathrooms are out this way. We'll be taking a break.
I thought it was going to have to do with like shoveling dirt or something.
For the current situation, we'd like to utilize and show how we should be taking our napkins in use, or tissues.
I'll share. We do a lot of facilitation at my job. Actually, Lily's on a lot of my meetings, so she said, "You're always doing great facilitation." I said, "It's because I get on meetings like this to learn new skills." Our meetings are based on the results-based framework, which could be, kind of dry. It's about getting to the result, and the meetings all have a structure. Everything's planned out literally to the T. We have annotated agendas that everything is planned out. And so when I get on meetings like this to find new tools on how I can make it more engaging online, people look to me for the tools. So I'm glad that I'm able to find tools that I can use. The sticky note one is something that I think we'll definitely take back to our next meeting. So I'll look to Lily to see if I did it correctly and if I made the meeting more engaging.
Nice. I did want to share that next month, Tom Vaughan, who I'm seeing over to the right side of my screen in my Brady Bunch, but he might be in a different position for you. He's going to share how to use test and learn techniques to increase your results. And that will be Friday, June 5th, I believe it is. It's always the first Friday of the month. So we're going to be planning another remote session about test and learn. And it has particular resonance for website design or product feature selection and, testing, but it applies to everything. So I invite you guys to subscribe to our e-news if you want to get email notifications, or we also have a Facebook page that we announce things on. We announce in Twitter, but usually the most reliable method for me letting you know about these sessions is email. When I don't screw up the link, right, Lily? She found a problem in my links. But please join me in thanking Abby and Kate for a wonderful session. And let's make Zoom suck less. We're not going to be doing a whole lot less of Zoom in the future, is my prognostication. So let's just get better at it, get more intentional, and keep in touch with each other and keep learning from each other.
Good stuff.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks everybody.
It was fun.
Thank you.
Have a great weekend and have fun.
Yes.
Fun.
Flatten the curve.
There you go.